I should be recording. I always like seeing the file. I see the file. Okay, let's go. Yeah, Going Medieval, Stone Early Access, key was provided by Tinsley PR, and I do have some stuff I can talk about. Not the heaviest news week. Unless I want to start talking about all the stuff going on with the Dragon Age game, and I don't want to do that, really. I think the best way I can put it is this. It makes me want to replay Origins again. I really enjoyed that game. I've only played... I have Origins 2 and Inquisition. I've not played Inquisition. I've played both Origins and 2. Origins I played more than once. One of the times I reviewed it. Dragon Age 2, I played it when I reviewed it as well, which was years after release. But, yeah. And I really enjoyed Dragon Age Origins better than 2. No opinion on the others because I haven't played them, and I don't know when I may, because I'm not gaming as much as I used to. Anyway, couple AMD things. Oh, here, let me pull this up. Got a third thing. It's kind of interesting. I just want to actually pull up the press release on it. Hard time. There. Hard time finding it. Okay. What all am I doing here? I pulled the thing up. I'm just not looking at it yet. I want to look around at this stuff. There's a freaking cow in Alicia's room. Alright. Oh, and there's one here too. Alright. Not sure what other response than that I can have. Okay, and this is good. Everything is staying warm there, I'm sure. Okay, it is just... I'm sorry I'm forgetting the name. I am so thankful that person shared, do a wall like this. Because pets can't go up and down ladders, but this is just dumb. But that's on the game, not on the person. Thank you so much, person who left that comment. Oh, man. Anyway. I honestly don't remember what it is I want to be doing here. I know winter is coming up. Oh, I didn't even realize that. Hang on. Where do I... There. I'm not sure which one some of these are. There. So I'd want one more then. Yeah, hit. How long have these things been here? And not being cut down? Because I know cut plants is also kind of high at the moment. Yeah. I got cooking high, I've got mining high. Nothing should be scheduled for mining, though. I don't think there's any location to actually doing that. I said funny thought crossed my mind. Making a rug is not tailored. Now when you think about it, it's not, but it is what goes there. Which is just kind of going to the point that I've made several times, that you should have things like smithing, carpentry, tailoring, all under crafting. Crafting should be generic, and then specializations in there, because rug making isn't tailoring. technically. I mean, it is working with textiles, but at least, well, I'm just thinking, do I want to actually try looking up specifically what tailors do? Or can I just leave it at, we know what tailors do, which I just, and rugs aren't, hang on, now I gotta think on this. Do rugs count as textiles? I'm actually not sure. They might not. I guess it would depend on the rug. But generally, I associate a rug with having at least much coarser fibers too. Sometimes they also have a pile to it, a nap to it. You know, not necessarily the crap. What did they call them? The ones from the 70s that were like really, really thick. Shag rugs. Yeah, shag rugs. That's an oddity. But still, you have a depth there that you don't typically have with clothing. And clothing is what I associate tailoring with. But even if you were like, well, tailoring covers all textiles, it's like, but do you necessarily consider rugs part of textiles? I mean, I guess in a very general way, but it still is. It's very different. I mean, I guess one way to put it is this. I could see two people, generally speaking, working with textiles, and one being very good at the textiles you would use for rugs, and another being very good at the textiles you use for clothing. And their skills, yes, one could do the job of the other, but they would not be as good at that as what they normally work in. Is kind of my thinking there. And I could be wrong. I could be very wrong there. But still is a... I don't think rug making should be under tailoring. Oh, I do have another one. Perfect. Okay, then actually... cancel that. That's actually kind of funny. I can't take that down to 0. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yep. What am I hearing? I mean, somebody is doing something. I legitimately have no idea what that sound was. Anyway, so one thing, I decided not to put it in the Friday write-up because I'm not sure how interesting it would be. Also, it's getting late. The Stardock puts out the Political Machine game every election cycle. And it just got its last major update pre-election. And one thing that they talk about in the press release for it that is interesting is that one thing is they had to update for voter enthusiasm. Which this is a quote from it. It's been challenging to have the game's underlying model factor with voting that occurs over multiple days, but I think we're getting there. We will see how close we are soon enough. You know, basically, enthusiasm is difficult to model, I think is how we can interpret that. Why is this guy green? Joyful. Is that why? Why is he joyful? I mean, that's great, but it's like, why? I mean, I'm sorry, but things like that, I find this game very lacking in. Because, I mean, especially when you consider that I've had people complaining, oh, I got nothing to do. It's like, it's right here. They have leisure activities. They have time. They have time for leisure activities, and then they don't do leisure activities. It's very annoying. I also gotta love, this dude can literally do anything he wants. This is the dude that's happy. Yeah. Boy, this game actually going 1.0 It's going to be fascinating if they don't change so much shit. Fascinating for me, because I will go. I've been saying that for a while. Anyway, other news I have. I've not looked too closely at it, just I've been busy with other things, with work, life, stuff like that. In the Q3 financial results call, apparently AMD did say that RDNA 4 GPUs are on track for 2025. Was it early 2025? Yes, early 2025. So that might be like CES as far as at least the paper launch, and then availability later. I got plenty storage yet for these things. I guess I could try doing that. I just don't know what end. Setting up a caravan to go out. Anyway, but it should also feature improved ray tracing and AI features, which will be interesting. Some of that will be interesting. I think of those two, I'd be more interested in the ray tracing because AMD's approach to acceleration is so radically different from NVIDIA's. I don't remember what Intel's method is. Just because AMD does two things differently. One is, yeah, this is still the case with the current series. One is it's integrated into the shaders. NVIDIA uses separate hardware. But the other is just where in the process tree it, oh yeah, I just realized. Are we having animals run in and do that? There's a frickin' bear here. How bad an idea would it be to try to tame it? I'm not going to hunt it. That seems an even worse idea. Although, actually, let's see about hunting some animals before it gets too late. There's also, yeah, hunted. Well, no, I got one person here that's ready and willing to hunt. Let's set those two for hunt. And see what you're doing. Because that should schedule them. Once they eat, that should schedule them to go hunting. Because it is the top thing for them. Yep. Okay. Let's actually watch this. But yeah, so there's an acceleration model, if you will, for how to figure out if the ray being cast is going to hit a okay. Urgent Hall, somebody please get to that quickly. Or although there. Called sorry, because I'm bouncing around a little bit. The BVH, bounding volume hierarchy, which is basically okay, let's just pause. See the hand here? Okay. Imagine putting a cube, you're most likely working with cubes here, around this character. If a ray falls in that, then you know there's a chance it will strike the character. If it falls outside of it, then, let's say we're only ray tracing the character. If it falls outside, then doesn't matter. We don't need to use any information from that ray. And that is one thing also that is funny with ray tracing. And I'll also be talking about path tracing a little later. Is casting rays is actually kind of cheap. It's the processing of the information, the shading to get the final color. That's where it gets expensive because you have so much more information and how it relates is so different than what we've had for rasterization. Because I remember this was many years ago, back with the Turing architecture, the RTX 20 series, when he was a doctoral student, I think, did the Q2 VKPT? Was it VKQ2? Whatever. Where he replaced, because Quake 2 is an interesting game because its entire graphical engine can be replaced, and this is actually like intentional. And he went in and he did replace it. Other people have done this as well, but he did it with a Vulkan-based path tracer. And one of the things I remember him talking about when he shared, hey, I've done this thing, he shared that the raycasting is actually really cheap. He could run that thing at 10 rays per pixel, which for that early hardware is really high, okay? I mean, it's nothing compared to what you actually want for photorealism. That takes like hundreds to thousands even. I think they say it typically starts at 250 rays per pixel. He hit 10, and that was impressive. But he did mention that, I think that the only way he did that was by basically having everything be a reflective surface, making it very cheap. Like, there's less information at each point to have to work with. So, yeah, the issue is less so the number of rays, it's more how you deal with all the information. So with the BVH, you're able to cut down what rays have any meaning to you. So, you'd surround this guy in a cube, or a gal in a cube, I guess. You would then cut it down into 8 smaller cubes, right? So, we do this, it would actually still, because he's ideally it would be more of a rectangle. But you'd do that and you'd keep cutting down, and every time a cube basically doesn't include any of him, any ray that intersects that cube, you can discard because there's no information about the character. But if you look at something like his hand here, especially because you have the fingers, and the fingers are separate, at least the thumb is from the forefingers, right? Looks like the forefingers themselves may actually be a single object. Well, single bone, I should say, that they all move as one. Or even his arm and the separation there. That's something, in theory, yes, you could have a BVH go deep enough to cover that, where BVH would recognize, hey, you got a gap here. But, and this is, I don't remember which is which between AMD and NVIDIA. Their approaches are different. One will use a very deep BVH, so it will use that acceleration model for longer. So instead of it being in like just 2 or 3 layers to BVH, let's say 5 or 6. I'm just pulling these numbers out of nowhere. But like 5 or 6. Okay, to determine if you can discard the rays passing through that box or not. Okay? The other uses fewer layers. So, as I said, 2 or 3. So that would be, very rough. Now, at this point, to get past that layer 3, to get past that layer 6, you would have to actually just cast the rays and use them whether they hit or not. So you'd have to cull the useless ones by another method. Now, that makes the BVH traversal, that's what the term is, how deep you go in that important, and then also how efficiently you can filter both culling out unimportant rays, but also combining data from the rays, combining the samples from the rays, the fragments from the rays, I should say. How efficiently you can do that, very important. And I don't remember which is which, but it's like, I think it is NVIDIA, and I could be wrong here, but I think it is NVIDIA uses a shorter BVH, and they rely more on their hardware to just figure out the shading of the higher amount of data from the rays, while AMD wants to go deeper in the BVH, so that more of the rays have already been culled without having to check each individual ray, because you're checking the bounding volumes. Okay? So I do wonder, and by the way, this would also be a reason why optimization is so different between them. That you could see a game that, for ray tracing, NVIDIA could be much better, even if technically the hardware on an AMD, like if you used a 20 series NVIDIA GPU, so that we can just ignore anyone saying that, well, NVIDIA has better hardware. It's like, let's ignore that by compensating by having like RTX 20 series against Radeon RX 7000 series, because that hardware-wise, I think people say that the ray tracing is about comparable between them. Okay? If we do that, you could still see it optimized where NVIDIA does better, because some games, the BVH that have been calculated for that, because some of that is pre-computed, or just what the engine provides, is only those 2-3 layers. AMD wants it deeper, because that's more so what their hardware is designed for, but the game then isn't optimized for that, so it hurts them. And by the way, I could have that flipped. But that's one thing that does make it interesting to me, especially to see then, okay, what is this enhanced ray tracing performance? Have they changed their model so that now it might use the other design, or might it be something else that they have achieved? I don't know. There's a part of me, I hope that they have kept it in the shaders, though, because still hunting. Because I do remember seeing some of the research papers on it when they released that, like the patents and such, talking about it, and there are definite advantages to using to keeping the ray tracing inside of the shaders, inside of the components that are doing all this math. For one thing, you're not necessarily you're not having to the heck? For one thing, you're not necessarily having to worry about. It should be pretty. Yeah, the carcass is already gone. By having it in the shaders, that allows you to. It's kind of funny. Have less information duplicated within the GPU, and this is an issue with NVIDIA, by the way, that there is information that both the shaders need and then the ray tracing cores need. So that is a problem there that AMD won't suffer from because it's all the same hardware. It can also then potentially have shaders as in the software that's run on the shader hardware. I know that gets confusing, but shaders are both referring to the actual part of the GPU that does the computation and the essentially mini programs that are being run. My brain just turned off a little bit because I got distracted trying to take care of this. But in theory, you could have on AMD the shader program say, "Hey, I need a ray cast for this information," and it doesn't even have to leave the shader hardware. It's all right there, and so it can be done much more quickly than going, "Hey, other piece of hardware over there, other circuitry, I need you to do this." Okay, well, I need this information, this information, this information, this information before I can run. Then it has to get that. Then it says, like, okay, do you still want that answer? Yes. Okay, here you go. So it is, AMD's design is more of a hybrid design. And yes, it does lack certain acceleration because it's not an ASIC like NVIDIA's RT cores are, but that kind of integration could prove more powerful. At least that is what I remember when I originally read those patents, but that was years ago. Okay, so that is, I think, important to note that some of this was, in fact, years ago. And things could easily have changed, and also I could be misremembering. Let's do that, see what they got. Nope, not seeing anything of interest. Yeah, wait, here. The clothing I might want to... Yeah, like the summer clothing actually would make sense to dump. That's not the caps. So, yeah, just it will be interesting. And as I said, I don't remember what Intel's strategy is. If it's closer to NVIDIA's, closer to AMD's, but... yeah. But I would say I would doubt AMD would... Okay, I can definitely get rid of some of these. Crap. Because I only need 11. And I've got, what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. No, 13. So I can get rid of 2 more. I'm just going by the cheapest. looks like that's it. Technically, they can't actually afford to do that. Although, that's actually kind of funny. They don't have the store at all. I don't need so many of these. I mean, in theory, I could sell them, something like a cow. But, give them the storage that way, but I don't really want to do that. No. I'm just not gonna be able to sell them all. That gotta love. Oh, hang on, but it is. How close? Oh, hang on. They seriously came in already overloaded. I can't trick. Wow, that's wild. Anyway, coming back to the AMD thing. Yeah, so I'm more interested in seeing the ray tracing, what they do for ray tracing there, and I doubt they would change it because they would have to change so much. I could see them redesigning the accelerator within it though, because it was built into the texture processors, the texture stream processors, I recall. I could see them changing how exactly it's executed in there. And they did do that, I want to say, between RDNA 2 and RDNA 3. So they might just do something like that again to increase throughput. And the new AI capabilities, hard to say what that exactly will translate to. It could be something like a new matrix system there, which AMD refers to matrix math, NVIDIA refers to tensor. It's, I'm pretty sure, doing the same thing, even though matrices and tensors are very different objects mathematically. Simplest way thing to put it is matrices are a form for storing, it's a structure for storing data. Tensors will actually change the data in there. So, one place where they come into play is with general relativity, so the warping of spacetime. If you have a tensor existing in space, and the space then gets warped, because it's a tensor, the values in it change. A matrix doesn't change because it is literally just a way of storing the data. So, but to look at them, they have similar representation when you do look at them. And so it's not surprising they would call it matrix math as well. And also, Intel's calling it that too. I'm not entirely sure why they would do that, even though it would still be tensor math that they're trying to do. But it might also just be like NVIDIA decided to try copying the term or whatever, or they're afraid NVIDIA would sue them, even though it is a actual scientific term. So anyhow, but yeah, so we'll see what all that becomes. And there's also something else I want to add, though. Sorry. Not all AI relies on tensors or matrix math. That is one thing I know I've ranted on before that does really annoy me with NVIDIA's dominance with the AI stuff, is that it convinced so many people that's the only way to do this, and that is absolutely false. There are myriad ways of doing AI. They are not reliant on such specific capabilities and such specific kinds of math. Because it's also worth noting, AI is an old technology. It goes back to the 70s even. Okay, so that would predate NVIDIA's existence. I mean, it's also kind of like how NVIDIA will sometimes claim that they invented the GPU. This is false. They invented the term GPU. Prior to that, they were called graphics accelerators. And they do, in fact, predate NVIDIA existing. So it's just it's kind of one of those things with the AI stuff. You don't need the matrix math, tensor math kind of stuff for AI. Certain AI, yes, benefit from that, but plenty do not. It's totally irrelevant. So it could be that these new AI capabilities, some of them would be understandable, is going to be... What are you talking about? And also... Oh, I didn't even realize that. Okay. They're not going to change right away, I know that, but it's still... Let's actually do that for now. So yeah, we will see. It is possible, though, that AMD will use a different method, but that would be integrating there. But it is, like I said, it's very... What was starting to say, it's very likely that they would just try to keep the Matrix stuff because... try to exploit NVIDIA's mind share, even though they're not NVIDIA, kind of thing. And I just realized I'm talking kind of softly. I hope the audio is picking up nicely. This is part of the reason why I do have some audio processing that I do that should lift up my voice. Yeah. I mean, I'm not concerned about it not being picked up, but it might not be very clear. I'm just trying to think, because there was another thought that I had concerning the AI stuff. But it kind of left my mind. Yeah, I guess kind of that. That it's also one other thing with a lot of the AI is that in some cases all the AI is doing is okay, that's actually good. These are both pets and came here to get food. Good. Well, or just spend the night. And my brain just turned off again. That's right. That AI in many cases, it isn't enabling something you couldn't do before. It's just doing it differently. So like one thing that I know I've talked about before, DLSS 2, the way NVIDIA describes it in their own blog posts about it, I recognized that when I read it as, oh, that's SMAA, just with a different morphological engine. Now, to be fair, that's their blog post, which a blog post need not be technically accurate. It shouldn't be inaccurate, but it's still, they might describe things one way because they feel that's what people understand better than what it actually is. So there is that aspect there. But it still is, I recognize that description as SMAA, just with the morphological engine being a trained neural network versus it being something more analytical in origin, more hand. What the heck? Did that cow literally just go right through the wall? What the hell? I mean, it does seem like the local animals are being kept out, but it boundary useful for organizing crops and livestock. Well, livestock goes right through it, so I'm not so sure about that anymore. What the? I can never remember where the hell they had fencing here. No, that's not it. Okay, but you know what? That screenshot actually got taken. Yes, it did. Okay. So there's that, but I also need to check. Oh, where is this even? Okay. Good. Sorry, I really want to make sure. All right, good. I have the... Sorry, I forgot it would do that. Okay. I just want to make sure that I'm getting the good PNG screenshots here. Because I haven't been taking them too often. I know it's set up correctly on the desktop, but I'm on the laptop. So, but oh my god, yeah. It's stuff like this that is why I've said, why are we getting these new features when there are things that clearly this is not how that should be working? It's spelled differently, but we got a Zeno's paradox here. You know what? No, I'm at least saving now. I don't know how much attention I want to pay to the game right now. Holy crap. I get it. They're pets. They're allowed to go through doors and such. Maybe that's what's going on there. But it's also just, what the hell? Literally not what it's supposed to be doing. And it's not like there's a fence, a gate in there that, like, it's just overlapping or something. No, it just, they walked right through. Anyway. The other thing, because I did mention I was going to talk about path tracing as well. Which path tracing is like ray tracing, but with ray tracing, it would... Here. So we got the light source here, right? Ray tracing is the ray gets shot out to, say, this. Oh, here, let's something I can click on. Or here. Hits this, bounces off, and it'll go into the fire, which is the light source. Let's ignore the sun for the moment. Okay? Now, path tracing, there's one bounce there with the ray tracing. With path tracing, there's multiple bounces. So it wouldn't just be that the ray strikes here and then goes there. It would be, or it tries to go there. It technically goes in random directions. It would strike here. It may then bounce up to here and then come down here. So, because technically there would be some ambient lighting. Now, this is so close, the majority of the lighting would be directly from here, but it is influenced. It would also be how some of the reflections, like, depending on where exactly the sun is, it's back over there. So this wall would actually be somewhat illuminated just because, even in the shadow here, because the sun is striking the water and it's reflecting up then, okay? That's something that the reflection, you'd get the reflection here on the water potentially. Well, assuming that, well, that's actually true, the water would also be in shadow, so that's not a great example. But it still is. Path tracing is more so, it enables more so ambient lighting, indirect lighting. Whereas ray tracing is more direct, because it is a single bounce there. Okay, so AMD put out it is technically a blog post, on GPU Open, neural super sampling and denoising for real-time path tracing. And by the way, I just have to say, I hate super sampling as the term being used here. That's not what it is. And that is fully on NVIDIA. That's fully on NVIDIA. It's because of the DLSS. But it is also, I have to grant, it's not directly NVIDIA's fault. It's NVIDIA's the source, but they're not completely the fault, so I can't actually blame them. I have to blame everyone else. DLSS, deep learning super sampling. What does it do? It takes a low resolution image and then it upscales it and is supposed to use the super sampling to help restore the data so it appears sharp. Okay? So it hallucinates the information that's lost because you added lower sampling rate. Okay, that's what that's doing there. And so people then have made super sampling and upscaling synonymous. It's not called DLSS, DL super sampling, because it does upscaling. It's called that because it was trained, at least the original version, I don't know how they trained DLSS 2.0, but 1.0, it was trained by having the supercomputers generate images at 64 times super sampling, as I recall, or maybe it was only 16x super sampling, but still very high super sampling. It was trained on super sampling, where you have it be at a very high sampling rate. Kind of, sort of high resolution. It's way more complicated than that. It's actually very interesting topic, but super sampling is more information, upscaling is going from low information to pretending high information, because it isn't true. It is not ground truth when you upscale, but it's meant to be better than the original. I get that, but it's anyhow. Basically, what they wrote up, what they've been working on, is training a neural denoiser, because I mentioned earlier that, like 10 rays per pixel was high for that original Q2VKPT, or whatever the hell it actually was called. And by the way, NVIDIA later took that, because the guy made it open source, later took that and then did RTX, Quake 2 RTX, or RTX Quake 2, whatever that was, which is a fraud. I'm going to call it that, or a con. That might be a better word. Because it is not. They did that to try to sell. See how impressive RTX is? Because it has all these graphical features, and it's ray tracing. It's like, no, it's not ray tracing. You were adding in effects that don't exist there. Like, they were adding in normal maps, which are newer than Quake 2. Quake 2 predates that. They had to change the actual underlying graphics. So, I mean, it's... Anyway. Why did I start talking about that? That's right, because you could do the 10 rays per pixel there, but it was typically more like, 1 or 2 rays per pixel, which would produce a very noisy image, because there's not nearly enough information there to produce a consistent, coherent image. Okay? I'm going to let you prepare, but then I'm going to have you talk to the guy preparing the food. And you can actually turn off the denoiser, I think, in the original thing. You may have also been able to do it in the RTX one. I don't quite remember. But it's actually shocking, the difference that makes. What AMD is talking about here is having... God. Well, at least you can carry stuff. Oh, wait, what? Why was it already... That was weird. I don't think I need any of it. Oh, well, I will take apple seconds. Okay. That... he has no gold. No gold at all. Oh, that's a little disappointing. I can take a fish dish from though, and we're even enough. So what they've done is, or what they are doing is training a neural network to do the denoising. So what that involves, and when this hits midnight, I'll stop this. What the denoising does is it takes that little bit of information from the rays, and it has to filter it, meaning figure out how it wants to combine that information and expand on it as well, to fill in for the gaps. What they're talking about here is having a neural network, trained neural network to do that. Now, on its own, that isn't necessarily a new idea. I doubt it is. But they are doing a little differently. For one thing, it is holistic in that it does mention having a single denoiser that would handle various kinds of effects. Let me see if I can actually find that so I can read directly out of the thing. Many real-time rendering engines include separated denoising filters for each effect, like diffuse lighting, reflections, and shadows, for quality and performance. Since each effect may have different inputs and noise characteristics, dedicated filtering could be more effective. But the idea here is to have this neural system actually handle all that. So it would be a single thing that would take it all in, which could dramatically improve performance. But the other thing that they're doing, and this is probably the more significant of what they are attempting here, is also having the upscaler in there as well. So they're not only training it for denoising, they're training it with super sampling data as well. And that is definitely interesting to have it all be in one, because that could potentially simplify a lot of the process, speed it up quite a bit. It does mention, though, that in some use cases it might be able to disable the upscaling, and just only apply the denoising. But it's also interesting that this was in the context of path tracing, which, as I tried to explain when I still had the game open, is more advanced. It is more complex. It's technically more a simulation of how light actually works, but is still, because it is so much more intense, it's probably going to be a long time before we really truly see it. I know that there are some games that they say that they're using it. I don't necessarily know how much. And it is also, a lot of it is still relying on these denoisers that can be very advanced, but it's still technically they're guessing, they're making things up. And this is regardless of AMD, NVIDIA, or Intel, regardless of any of that. We are not at all near having photorealism with just ray tracing or path tracing. It would take, I'm pretty sure I did say before, 250 rays per pixels, what I'd seen referenced before, for the minimum number to actually approach having photorealism. But it would be more like 500 is what you would actually want to go to. I don't believe any of the modern GPUs, or those predicted even, like I don't think the 5000 series, and I doubt the, are they calling it the 8000 or 9000 series from AMD? I don't remember. I doubt that any of those are even coming close to 100 rays per pixel. Okay, that is just... But as I also said, it's less the actual ray casting itself, it's more the processing, the filtering of the data down. And by the way, to help prove that fact, for anyone thinking, well, wait, that doesn't make sense. No, this is true, even with rasterization. When I did the anti-aliasing article, however many years ago now, I'll actually look that up. I love that article, by the way. I am unashamed of that. Because that took me so long, but I learned so much. It is such a fascinating thing. Okay, Frustrum Follies was after. Yep. Okay, that was back in 2019. That came out. Series Statistics, the Aliasing Adventure. If you look that up on Overclock Club, or if you want to look it up on GitHub, because I put it all up there. Pretty sure it has all the data, but it certainly has the document, all the artwork that I did, the screenshots. Let me actually check. I'll just open up the link. Because like a lot of my, I do have the data and graphics in here as well. But one of the things that is in there that I was able to do, because there was a game, series. Hang on. I almost just started saying Series Statistics. No, that's not it. Series Sam Fusion 2017. The old Series engine that Crow Team had been using, they made it themselves, but they stopped using it. Talos Still 2 uses Unreal Engine 5, and I'm disappointed by that. But anyway, it offered so many different options. It was wonderful. But that included super sampling and multi-sampling. Super sampling it only went up to super sampling 4x, so 4 samples per pixel. MSA went up to 8x, but super sampling 4x and MSA 4x. Well, x4. Technically, and it's possible that, let's assume that sampling patterns are the same. So the position of the samples within a pixel are the same. They're both using the same number of samples, but the performance difference between them is going to be big. You know what? I actually forgot. I have this. I actually have the document on the laptop, so I can just pull it up here. I want to look at the data. I know I got a lot of image comparison, but I know I should also have performance comparisons as well. Just need to find them in here. It's been a long time since I've gone through this. And by the way, it is not a short article. I fully acknowledge that. But it is... I don't just say it to talk myself up. I do think it is... And I probably still have plenty of typos and such, plenty of mistakes in it, but I do still consider it probably one of the best sources of additional information on anti-aliasing that gets into more detail. Okay, no, that's the VRAM utilization. I want performance. Here we go. So, the frame time, let's use that, on average, for super sampling at 4x, right, so 4 samples per pixel, was 12.656 for super sampling. Okay, so that translates to 79 frames per second. Multi-sampling, okay, which would be using the same number of samples. Okay, it is the same number. The pattern might be different, but the number is the same. Okay, all that's different is the filtering. All that's different is how it is using the data that's collected. It is at 4.217 milliseconds for the frame time average. That's 237 FPS. Okay, that is a major swing. And also to help add to this even further, MSA 8X is 4.314 milliseconds. So it is a little bit slower, but we're still talking about over 230 FPS. Okay? And that's with MSA. What MSA does, the thing that distinguishes multi-sampling from super sampling, is it checks with the samples, and it's like, hey, are all these samples within the same object? Because you can't actually get that. There's something called the stencil buffer. There's another name for it as well. I don't recall what it is, but the stencil buffer is one of the names for it. And it's like, yes, they all fall within. Okay, then we're assuming that there's no line that could be aliased between that these samples cross. So we're only going to use one sample. So it simplifies the filtering work there with MSA, and that's why it can be so much faster than super sampling. Super sampling is like, I don't care. There are 4 samples in this pixel. I'm going to take all that data, I'm going to combine it together, that's what filtering is, and then I'm going to shade the pixel based on that. Okay? That is much more intense, and that's kind of the thing with the ray tracing here as well, and the path tracing, is this having all that extra data. That's actually where the difficulty is managing that data, is filtering and processing off that data. The rays themselves are not necessarily that difficult. So yeah, it is. Man, I'm so glad I did that article. I mean, it's just so many things that I learned, and that still to this day come in handy. But it is also one other thing I'll add is I think this is a reason why you will basically never see MSAA offered in something like Unreal Engine 5. Probably also Unity. I'm not sure about that one. But instead, all these filtering methods, because both supersampling and multisampling function by increasing the number of samples per pixel. You can't do that with ray tracing. For a couple reasons. One is ray tracing intrinsically involves having the rays go in multiple directions. But with rasterization, no, you're just seeing how many, you're intersecting the object, you're not bouncing off. And as the AMD, the GPU Open blog post was sharing, they use a Monte Carlo algorithm, which is a random, it is a algorithm for producing random outcomes. That would defeat the purpose of supersampling multi-sampling. Like, it would be no different supersampling ray tracing as just increasing the number of rays per pixel. Kinda. I mean, technically you can have an offset, but what would the benefit be when the ray is still going to go in a completely different direction? It would functionally be the same as you're just increasing the number. And they're not going to do that because that's the thing that the hardware is struggling with. So it would improve the image quality, but the performance would be hurt even further. So instead, they're going with more filtering methods such as FXA is mentioned here, but there's MLAA, which a lot of people crap on. I mean, yeah, it's an older technology. I'm pretty sure it's actually the oldest, or some of the temporal stuff is older, but it'll only be within a year. Like, a lot of this stuff is actually from the same time period, roughly. But morphological filtering, SMA is actually a form of morphological filtering. It's much more advanced. In a way, what DLSS does, that whole neural training, is morphological in nature. It's trying to interpret what is there, what's in the image, and then from that, figure out, okay, there's potentially aliasing here, so I'm going to filter this differently. I'm going to render a little differently, like blur it here, move the colors there, in order to avoid the aliasing. But it's also adding in data for upscaling. but that's all filtering. So it's not truly addressing anti-aliasing, it's just trying to hide aliasing. It's not truly trying to address aliasing, it's just trying to hide the aliasing. Supersampling, multisampling, especially supersampling, actually try to address aliasing. But yeah, I can believe, though, that because there's such a push for ray tracing, which I think is stupid for other reasons as well, that you're going to see these technologies that are the better technologies die out. The only true weakness to something like SSAA and MSAA is the temporal factor. They're good for they are spatial aliasing solutions. They're not temporal aliasing, but there's still ways that you could improve that. Like SMAA S2X, which you basically never see, but if you see SMA 4X, it's integrated in there. That is in fact morphological and the spatial multisampling, and the morphological engine can potentially use that. Do some stuff a little bit better, but it is also SMA 4X combines a temporal component. So there are ways to combine spatial and temporal. It's just there's like very little interest in doing that, even though the hardware is getting better and better. Like in theory, a modern GPU today would kick ass doing MSAA and even SSAA. So, but it's like, nope, we want to focus everything on ray tracing, this thing that I'm sorry, I think it's a waste. It's like I've got games. Dragon Age Origins that I was talking about earlier. When the hell is that even from? That's an old game. Yeah. That's from 2009. Is it still a good-looking game? Not necessarily, but it's not a bad-looking game. Like, you could sharpen up the textures some, and I'm sure there are mods for doing that, and you could sharpen up the models some, and again, I'm sure there are mods for that, and it'll almost certainly be be able to compete with some modern games. And it also has a realistic style to it, which is one thing that I do remember with seeing the stuff from Veilguard. It has a more cartoony style, a very different art style. Even Dragon Age 2 actually did that a little bit too, as well, where it shifted towards a more of a cell shading kind of look. But there was a gritty realism, and that can also probably be part of the reason why it would look so good. The original, but it's also like I like using Just Cause 3 as an example as well, because that's an older game now, but it looks great, and I think that can directly compete with some modern games today, and also runs fantastic. It's well optimized, and it's still it runs great on modern hardware. The Witcher 3, it's been longer since I've touched that game, but that was 2016. Again, looks fantastic. At the time, it pushed hardware, but today it's easy for a lot of hardware. How many modern games are necessarily looking better than that? That isn't just a sharpen up the textures, or isn't a let's increase the vertex count a little bit. It's we should be right now in almost like a golden era for visual fidelity with just rasterization, but instead so much focuses on rasterization, and I see the hits like we gotta use, in some cases, not even identified anti-aliasing methods, where it's just turning it up to ultra. It's like, okay, what is that doing? I want to know what that's doing. I understand the differences. Tell me what it's doing. Versus MSAA, that it's like, hey, that's actually giving me the effect I want. And you could also, I'll just add this and then stop. Congratulations, you got a rant for me today. There's nothing preventing you from having MSAA to generate the image and then applying something, not FXAA, that is not temporally stable, but a temporal method after that, working just on the final frames. So a TAA afterwards. It is also, it's like SMAA was designed to enable some of this stuff. You could resurrect that, because it doesn't seem like many games are using it anymore, or at least the idea is there, so the solution's there, to combine MSAA with a temporal component to produce a better final image that tackles temporal aliasing and spatial aliasing. You could definitely do that today. The hardware is more than powerful enough for a lot of this stuff. It's just, it would take people actually engineering this, and also take developers optimizing their damn games, which it definitely does seem that is a problem. It's like the whole Just Cause 3 still looks great. That's a game coming up on 10 years old. It runs great. are we really? So do we really have modern games that look that much better than it? I mean, it's like enough so that it's like that game will run at like 100 FPS easily. If I installed it on laptop, it's probably be running at 100 FPS easily. Is it really worth, having, the visual fidelity of a newer game today that it's like it'll look a little bit better, but is maybe hitting 50 on the laptop? I mean, we're not in a great time. I feel we've lost. We're at the swing of the pendulum where we're not optimizing. Hopefully, we come back to that. Okay, that has been enough of this rant. See you next time.